So you've installed Gray Zone Warfare. You've launched the game, created a character, picked your faction, hopefully the same one of your friends. You've loaded in, and now you're standing in your faction's fob. Now what? Well, it's open world, so you can really do whatever you want. But I put together 10 things you should know about before you run out into the wild. Now, my goal with these 10 things is to prevent early frustrations that I had, limit wasted time from not understanding mechanics, and to make the game as enjoyable as it can be for you. So let's not waste any more time and get right to them. So first up, let's talk landing zones, as this is going to be your primary method of getting around the map other than running. There are 24 total LZs available to each faction. All but 3 of these are the same for everybody. The 3 that aren't are the 3 that are in your starter town, and those are unique to each faction. So for example, as Mithras, I had the 3 LZs available around Nam Thaven, but none of those ones around Kluvongus or Fa Lang were available to me. This applies to the other factions. They didn't have my 3 that were in Nam Thaven. Now, when you're looking and you don't have them explored, these landing zones are pretty easy to spot on the map. They stand out because basically they're big clearings because a helicopter has to land, and they often have a little circle of darker color or whatever in the various fields that make it easier to see. All it takes to discover these is to get within about 100 meters of them or so, and they'll pop right up on your map. You'll get a little message that says landing zone discovered. Though keep in mind, some are given to you via quest too. I was given Foxtrot 1 or 2, I can't remember which, but I was given one of them for Hunter's Paradise once I got tasks up there. The same was with India 1 for Bonpa, and I believe you also get them for the YBL bunkers, though I got mine by exploring early on before I did any quests. Once you have an LZ discovered, you can go from LZ to LZ or LZ to home or base camp or base to LZ. You do that simply by clicking on that and setting that as your destination. That's how you do it, is you click and set your destination, and the closest LZ will be picked as your pickup point. Now, when you go to fly into an area, point of interest, especially if it's one you suspect has PvP going on, don't always go to the closest LZ. Very often, the few extra minutes it takes to run from a little further away, a DZ that's not right next to the POI, will save you some conflict getting LZ camped and potentially give you the element of surprise because they might not even hear the helicopter coming. Now, next up is the healing system. At first glance, it's going to be overwhelming and honestly feel too complex. And that's how I was for the first couple hours. But once you get it figured out, it's intuitive and really easy to understand. And here, I'm just going to provide you some basics that speed that process along. So there are 6 primary types of healing items. It boils down to bandages, tourniquets, pain meds, splints, surgery kits, and blood bags. These come in various sizes and flavors, but each type works the same. So like, for example, there's 2 or 3 kinds of bandages. They all do the same thing. One's not better than the other than more usages. This is for tourniquets, blood bags, surgery kits, all of it. So the first of these items that we'll go into detail is bandages, because these serve a few roles and they're going to be what you use the most. They can both stop bleeding and heal minor injuries to your character. You will use a ton of these. I always tended to bring at least 2 of them with me every time I went out. Now keep in mind the animation is kind of long, so they are best used between fights or when you're in a safe place you can't be pushed. If you're in the middle of a battle, that's where the next item comes in. The tourniquets are simply for stopping bleeding only. That's all they do. But they have one of the faster animations in the game, so you can use them mid-fight and not be tied down for quite as long as like a bandage. They are essential for stopping blood loss, which can lead to not only impaired vision, but eventually unconsciousness of your character. Now, blood loss can happen in 3 levels of severity: light, moderate, and heavy. And it doesn't take much till you start getting impaired. So you want to make sure you get those stopped as soon as you have the opportunity to do so. And this leads into the next item, blood bags. These are simply used for replacing lost blood. This is the only real hit point system that is functioning in the game. If you look on your character screen, you can see you have a blood hit point pool, if you will. Now, as this gets depleted from bleeding and wounds, it will slowly regenerate on its own, but blood bags fill it up quickly and will get you back into fighting shape much faster. Now, splints, they're pretty much straightforward. They fix broken bones or injured bones. This will show when your character has basically a highlighted bone, specifically on your arm or leg. They don't do anything for any other injuries, so they're just a waste if you don't use that, if you use them when you have something else going on. Now, pain pills simply stop the pain effects. Most of it boils down to audio of your character wheezing or coughing or just audibly complaining out loud to everybody else. Outside of that, I didn't see a lot of use to them because the other injuries and stuff you had were usually either dealt with by other meds or were gone by the time it mattered for the pain meds to kick in. Another simple thing, a like on the video and hitting that subscribe button if you like the content. It's free for you and helps me out a ton, especially as we transition into doing more Gray Zone Warfare content. Now, surgery kits, these are for any kind of organ damage you might survive. and this is up to and including brain damage. You have 4 organs in the hitbox system: lungs, heart, the liver and stomach are pretty much combined, and then the brain. Each of these has their own separate effects when you're injured, but the only way to fix that effect or stop it is with a surgery kit. So after a gunfight and you survive, it always behooves you to go look at your character screen, your health screen, the little spinny thing, and make sure that you don't have any injured organs, because you burn through your other meds trying to make yourself better, and it won't actually fix that problem. Now, there are additional med items like stims and toxins and radiation reducing pills, but to be honest, I really didn't use these all that much in the first 7 days of playing. Most of the stims have some pretty crazy effects that aren't bad, like the first one you have access to in the trader heals all broken bones. And then there's another one that gives you basically infinite stamina for 100 seconds. But both of them do have pretty severe negative side effects once they wear off. One of those being toxicity level. It's another kind of thing on your character screen you can see tick up. So if you are using stims, make sure to bring the associated pills. Now, the hitbox section here goes right along with the health section. Our character hitboxes operate pretty much similar to other games. We've got legs, arms, head, torso, all that kind of stuff, right? But there are 2 very important exceptions. First, there is no damage hit point pool. You don't have like 85 hit points on your chest or 100 for your whole character. And then also tied in with that is the organs we mentioned for the healing system. The lungs, heart, liver, stomach, and brain have their own hitboxes. This means 2 things that we experienced a lot of. You can shoot someone a lot, but if you don't hit vital organs, either with the bullet or the cavity that is created by the bullet, and we'll get into that later, if you don't hit the organ with those, you don't kill somebody and you don't drop them. Death conditions are linked to massive loss of blood or extreme organ damage. If you don't reach either of those thresholds, individuals do not go down. On the flip side of this, however, a well-placed shot from any ammo that gets through the armor can one-shot anyone. And this isn't just headshots, but also shots placed in the heart as well, or the boiler room as some people call it. Even with a small caliber like 5.56, a single shot can kill an enemy. So when you're shooting, keep this in mind. Well-placed shots are far more valuable than wild sprays, because unless you're really close, that spray might leave you with an empty mag and an enemy who is still a threat. Now, one of the more important mechanics that took longer for me to figure out was the QUICKBAR. This goes hand in hand with the healing system, as well as grenades and your provisions. Instead of a lot of other games where you use numbers, 1 through 0 on your keyboard to use hotkeys, the QUICKBAR operates with a drop-down system from selecting the healing items, the grenades, or provisions, like I said. Now, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure you have the associated items in a container that is linked to the hotbar system. You can tell which one it is because that is a little lightning bolt in the top left. This is generally rigs, belts, and pockets. Items that are in your secure container or backpack will not be accessible through the hotbar system. Now, using the system is pretty simple. Once the items are where they're supposed to be, you hit H to use healing items, G for grenades, and P for provisions. If there are multiple types, you can select which item you want to use by holding, for example, the H key, and then using your mouse wheel to cycle around to each one. Once you have the med that you want to use, you hit H again and it'll use that med, and then it remembers that as the quick press key. So for example, I select the tourniquet here. If I just press H again without holding it, it will use the tourniquet again as a quick key. Now, the next must know is tied to both the healing system and the QUICKBAR. You are able to heal friendlies with your own meds, but a few things need to be done correctly first. Just like with the QUICKBAR, in order to heal a friendly, this requires the item that you're going to use to be in a container with a lightning bolt. Next up, you need to go to the injured teammate and examine them. After that, you'll be given options to treat. This works from simple wounds all the way up to full-on surgery. Interesting tidbit too, the surgery animation is faster when you heal someone else versus yourself. So if you're in a squad and everybody's screwed up or you're healing people, you can heal each other and do it faster than healing yourselves. This also means that multiple people can heal a single individual very quickly. Now, this is a convenience factor for people who are up and about, but it's a must-have system to recover anybody who is in a coma state or unconscious. Now, when you go down, you don't always die. Sometimes you're just in a coma state, and if your friends can get to you in time, they can pick you back up. For me, when I'm working on somebody else, I always prioritize stopping blood loss, then giving them blood to get them back up on their feet, then fixing the other organs and other issues that might be going on that's keeping them down. The big thing too is if you stop the bleed, it buys you a little more time to deal with either foes around, healing yourself, waiting for friends to show up, and it prevents your unconscious friend from dying. And that's because bleeding out is usually what kills you when you're in a coma or knocked out versus, you know, hitting the button and just quitting. And this is one of the things I really like about this system versus other games. Even if you get knocked down all the way to unconscious in a coma, almost dead, you can get back to 100% regardless of what happened to you, as long as you have enough meds and time. Now, similar to the health system, the ballistic and armor system is daunting at first glance, especially if you have no experience with real-world firearms and body armor, which not a lot of people do. But there are a few simple rules that will simplify the whole process and make things easier to understand. So first off is bullets, and they follow a pretty simple progression path. They go from what is considered high expansion, low pen, to low expansion, high pen. Now, expansion in other games, from Tarkov all the way to Call of Duty, is simulated in a process of having bullets that do more damage, do more hit points of damage. But because Gray Zone Warfare doesn't have a hit point system, this won't work. So what they've done is they've gone to a more realism-based body cavity and bullet expansion system. They showed a brief example of this in a sample video or an exploratory video, whatever you want to call it, a little while ago, using simulated ballistic gel to show how different rounds create different cavities. So simply put, high expansion bullets make much larger wound channels, but don't penetrate armor. But while armor piercing bullets pen armor better, they make smaller wound channels. This plays out in the game with bullet placement. The highest expansion ammo for 5.56, for example, is HPBT, which stands for Hollow Point Boat Tail. Against unarmored enemies, this round is devastating. You don't have to be incredibly precise with your torso shots to take out the heart, because the wound channel is so big that if that shape affects the organ, hits the organ, even though you're shot over to the right, it counts as hitting. But once you start fighting enemies with even basic armor, the HPBT bullets become incredibly ineffective and pretty much pointless. Now, how many different rounds that each kind of caliber has varies from bullet to bullet, but you can tell pretty quickly by looking at the round's description if it's armor piercing or high expansion. They all follow a gradient that moves from full expansion and no armor piercing, which is your hollow points, your soft points, things like that, to little expansion and lots of armor piercing, which is, you know, it starts off with 8.55 but gets up into 8.55A1 or BS and PP for the 5.45. And BP for the 7.62 AKs. Tied with this is the armor system. Now, for armor and how it is ranked, it goes like this: 2A to 2 to 3A to 3. Now, if the armor has a plus in it sitting in there, that armor sits slightly above whatever that is linked to. So, for example, 2 plus is better than 2, but not quite as good as 3A. This is based on a realistic system with NIJ and ballistics. Maybe we'll do another video explaining that later, but for now, I just wanted to get the order so you know which armor is better. For now, I saw no benefit to going with the lower end armors over higher end armors. They are a little bit lighter and some have better pockets, but I always tended to go with the highest level I had access to just because I wanted more protection. Along with this, you need to keep in mind that armor has front, side, and back protection. And not all armor has all of it. There is armor that only has front protection. It's specifically labeled on each armor in the top left, so keep that in mind when you look at it, what you're running. These rules apply to helmets as well, but there's one super important thing to remember. Right now, helmets cover the whole head hitbox. There is no opening at the front or the sides and nothing like that. If they have a helmet on, it protects the whole head. This is insanely important to remember, because if you're running flesh ammo or hollow point boat tails like we talked about before, if you run into an enemy that has a helmet, it is going to be very difficult to kill them even with headshots. Now, when you're going to run into enemies like that depends on the area you're in. As of right now, the point of interests that are around the map fall into 3 categories, or at least I put them in that: easy, medium, and hard. Pretty simple, right? And knowing which of these you are walking into is very important for picking your gear, as well as knowing how to approach these areas and enemies. The easy areas are pretty simply the 3 starter towns: Namthaven, Kluvangza, and Falang. Enemies here are, for the most part, unarmored. They used non-armor piercing ammo and operate in smaller, more manageable groups. You will also see the least amount of PvP here, as it's a long run from any enemy LZ. There's no opposing faction quests in that area, and there's little to gain as far as loot. But for medium difficulty, you have several more areas. These boil down to the Bunker YBL, Sawmill, Hunter's Paradise, Falang Airfield, Bon Pa, and Blue Lagoon. Here you will fight both unarmored and moderately armored enemies, and they run anywhere from the low end to mid-tier ammo. They're usually a little bit thicker, and as well as this is the first place you're going to probably get into PvP. The quests for each faction are the same. So everybody has quests at Bon Pa or YBL or Hunter's Paradise. So this brings everybody together into these hotspots. This applies to the hard and most difficult areas as well. This is Fort Nerith Military Base, the Midnight Sapphire Resort and Golf Course, and then the city or large town of Tiger Bay. The enemies here are generally heavily armored. They have pretty much military individuals. They have far greater numbers than any other areas, and they shoot some of the best ammo in the game, so your armor isn't usually going to save you. They are extremely difficult to solo, and it's best done in groups so you can cover multiple angles as the AI moves around and rushes you when you're reloading and tries to flank you and stuff. And like I said, this is also where you're going to get into some of the most intense PvP. Not just because of the quest, but this is where the best gear is. The best loot and stuff is always found here, which draws players together for frequent fighting. And since we mentioned it, let's talk about the quests and the trader system. Now, traders are not physicalized in game. You don't walk up to them and trade with them or anything like that. You access them through your menu anywhere you want, as long as you're within inside the walls of your fob. The exception to this is once you get on a helicopter, even if you're sitting there, as soon as your butt hits the helicopter, you don't have access anymore. Now, there are 6 total, but you only start with 3. The remaining traders will unlock as you level up. These traders, they buy and sell their own style of goods. Handshake does armor and bags. Gunny is NATO weapons and components. Lab Rat deals in meds and food. Once you get Artisan unlocked, she's your first AK seller with the 7.62 AKs, whereas Turncoat deals in the 5.45 AKs as well as SKSs, and eventually some armor as well. Banshee, the last one you unlock, he deals with the big boy guns, the 308s, and the higher end shotguns. Now, the rep system with each trader is based off of pretty much finishing tasks, but you can also raise it a little bit by spending money with them. Now, only buying raises rep, not selling, so keep that in mind. Now, along with this, each trader has their own task tab that you interact with, and this is where you accept tasks, turn in tasks items, and complete tasks as well. Once you complete the task, you actually click the complete button. The reward for that task will show up in your message tab if there is one, which I think every quest had a reward, even if it was just a little bit of money or something. But if they have items, that's where you collect them. You go to your message tab, click collect. You have to have room in your inventory, but that's where you do it. This is also not just where you get rewards. You'll get quest items from them as well, like markers and sample boxes and some other stuff. They almost always give you what you need beforehand, so make sure you collect from them so you're not wasting money buying stuff you didn't need. Now, as time goes on, the quests will undoubtedly have guides on YouTube here. I'll probably even end up doing some. That's because I know you guys want them. But I want to implore you guys to try to do these without guides at first. Some of the most fun I had was trying to figure out these quests by myself, just based on the dialogue, or VoIPing with other PMCs that I ran into in the area that were hunting for the same stuff. It turned into kind of like an organic scavenger hunt. It was a lot of fun. But if one's kicking your butt, which there definitely will be some that do, and they're hard to get through, I totally get it. We'll get guides to save you some time. But if you read the quest dialogue carefully, almost every quest gives you enough information to find the location you need. Now, you have to look in the world for subtle clues in the environment. You know, one of the early ones has you looking for graffiti on buildings to identify gang houses. Sometimes you're looking for a body, which isn't interactable. It's, you know, it's a world item, if you will. And that's what you need for your quest. And then other environmental things will let you know where you need to go. So just keep that in mind. The quest system is fun if you let it be. Now, for map usage, one of the best tools at your disposal is the map system, and it's given to you via kind of a Blue Force tracker kind of system. A quick tap of the M button gives you a small view, a kind of a pop-up view, smaller view. It's still pretty good size. And this is of your immediate surroundings, but it allows you to still move around. Holding M pulls up its full map functionality kind of in like your inventory. And this is where you manage your helo rides, locate stuff on the map if you want, set waypoints, make sure you're not shooting friendlies, all that good stuff. The detail on the map is not incredibly high fidelity, but it's kind of like satellite imagery, so you can use it to find things pretty effectively. As I said before, LZs tend to stand out. Buildings for quests, all that kind of stuff. If you know what you're looking for and the features you're trying to find, you can usually find exactly what you're looking for on the map. And with that, that's pretty much everything. We'll wrap it up. I appreciate you guys watching the video all the way through. If you made it this far, remember to like and subscribe. I have to imagine if you're this far into the video, you liked it. And you're probably going to want more, especially if we get into the specific details about ballistics once we have a little bit more time with the game. But we'll leave it at that. I wish you the best of raids or missions or whatever you want to call them in Lemang, and we'll see you in the jungle.